Hello students, this is Ananya. How are you all? Hope you are doing great and are safe. So today, together we are going to explore about life. We know that things around us are either living or non-living. The living beings have a very special ability to perform different kind of functions. Okay, to perform these functions, we need different set of organs. These organs are made up of the assembling of different kind of cells together. Now we can call that the cells are very much similar to the bricks. How? Because the bricks are essential to make a building. Similarly, the cells are essential to perform different functions in our body. It is essential for the sustenance of life. So can we call this cell the fundamental unit of life? Yes, we can. So cell, it is the fundamental unit of life. It is a self-replicating structure. Why? We'll come to know this later. So the Robert Hooke in 1665 was the first one to observe and name the cell. He observed this under a simple magnifying device which is shown here, and he observed the thin slice of cork. He observed this hexagonal shaped cells which he named cell. But what was the distinctive observation in his experiment was that the cells were not motile, they were not mobile. So he declared that the cells are dead. These are dead cells. So then came the cell theory in 1838, which was given by M.J. Sheldon and Theodore Schwann, who formulated the cell theory. They mentioned that, number one, all organisms are composed of cells. Number two, the cell is the structural and functional unit of life. And number three, that cells arise from pre-existing cells. This third point was added by Rudolf Karl Virchow. So this scientist has contributed to the cell theory by giving the most important point that cells arise from pre-existing cells. So if we look at the brief cell theory timeline, we'll get a clear picture about the different botanists, microbiologists who have contributed in telling different things about cell which helps us even today. So 1665, Robert Hooke, I've already mentioned about him that he coined the term cell, and he mentioned that the cells are dead cell. Then in 1674, it was Anton von Leeuwenhoek, who is commonly known as the father of microbiology. Okay, and he was the first person to ever see microorganism. And let me tell you, he mentioned that the cells are living. He observed this under a compound microscope. There was a development in the microscope also. By the time Robert Hooke observed cells, it was a simple magnifying device, so he couldn't get a clear picture of how cells look like and what are its characteristics. But when Anton von Leeuwenhoek saw this under his compound microscope, he observed that the cells are motile, they are moving, and he named them animalcules. Okay, so he gave a special term to those cells as animalcules, and he contributed towards the establishment of microbiology. He is known as the father of microbiology. Then in 1827, Robert Brown, he is known for discovering the cell nucleus, and let me tell you, he observed this in the cells of orchids. He gave a detailed description of the cell nucleus. Then in 1839, we have already discussed that J. Sheldon and Theodore Schwann have given the cell theory. They are the co-founders of the cell theory, and they have given these three principles of cell theory. Okay, 1855, Rudolf Karl Virchow, he concluded that the cells are made from the existing cells because the existing cells continuously divide to form new and new cells. Isn't this interesting? In 1855, Louis Pasteur, He made significant discoveries in chemistry, including treatments and research of many diseases. So by this timeline, you get a clear picture of the different observations that were made by different microbiologists, botanists, chemists about the cell and its development, the cell and its characteristics. Now, how can you define a cell? Let me define it for you. A cell may be defined as a unit of protoplasm which is bounded by a plasma or cell membrane and possessing a nucleus. Now, what is protoplasm? The protoplasm is the life-giving substance and includes the cytoplasm and the nucleus. The different substances that make a cell are collectively called protoplasm. The protoplasm is composed of water, majorly water, which is around 70 to 80%. Water is present in the cell. Then there is carbohydrate, lipid, protein, electrolyte. What is electrolyte? It is the combined mixture of sodium, potassium, magnesium, calcium, phosphate, chloride and bicarbonate. So, cell is a basic unit of protoplasm which is bounded by a plasma or a cell membrane and it has a nucleus. Now, depending upon the number of cells present in any organism, we can classify organisms into two. What are those two organisms? Unicellular organisms and multicellular organisms. By name, it is very clear that uni means one, multi means more than one. So, organisms which are made up of only single cell are called unicellular organism, for example, amoeba and paramecium, and multicellular organism which are made up of more than one cells. Example, humans, cow, rose, etc. Now, depending upon the shape of cells, we can also classify and name some of the cells like bacillus, which is rod shaped, coccus, which is spherical in shape, then spiralis, which is spiral in shape, then there is vibrio, which is comma shaped. Then in humans also, we have different kinds of cell and shape of cells, like RBC, which is either round or biconcave. Then there is nerve cells. You can see that is branched and it's very long. Then there is white blood cell, which is amoeboid in shape, which is called amoeboid. Okay. Then there is columnar epithelial, which is very much long and narrow. Then there is guard cells. You remember where you can see these guard cells? You can see in its stomatal pores. So this is what? Kidney shaped cells. Okay. Now we come to the most important types of cells. So there are basically two types of cell. One is prokaryotic cells, another is eukaryotic cells. So first, let's break the term prokaryotic and eukaryotic. So prokaryotic. So pro means early, primitive. Okay. So and eukaryotic means U means true and karyon means nucleus. So by name it is very much clear that what is the difference between these two kind of cells. Prokaryotic cells, the nucleus is not well defined, it is known as nucleoid. Okay. And eukaryotic cell, the nucleus is well defined, it is surrounded by a nuclear membrane. In prokaryotic cell, there is single circular chromosome. And in eukaryotic cell, it possesses more than one and linear chromosome. Prokaryotic cell doesn't have membrane-bound organelles, while eukaryotic cells have them. Okay. An example of prokaryotic cells can be bacterial cell, and of eukaryotic cell can be human cell. Okay. In the next slide, you have a picture wherein you will get a clear picture of what is the difference between prokaryotes and eukaryotes. So you can see in eukaryotes there is membrane enclosed nucleus, while in prokaryotes there is a nucleoid. There is no well-defined nucleus. Okay. There is mitochondrion in eukaryotes, which is not present in prokaryotes. They are not membrane-bound organelles. Ribosomes are present in both of them. There is cell membrane in both of them, but not definite of cell wall. Okay, cell wall is present in some eukaryotes. There is a distinctive feature called flagellum in prokaryotes, and flagellum is responsible for the movement of the cell. Why the cells are mobile is because of the flagellum in it. In the prokaryotes, to be specific, there are different organs or different cells for the movement in the cell. Okay, so this is the difference between prokaryotes and eukaryotes. Now coming to the cell structure. Now cell structure comprises individual components with specific functions essential to carry out life's processes. As I've already mentioned, that cells are essential for performing different kind of, because every single cell has a role to perform in it. So different kind of cells assemble together and they collectively perform a function together which is necessary to sustain a life. We have already discussed about it, isn't it? Okay, now these components include cell wall, cell membrane, cytoplasm, nucleus and cell organelles. Now we see this picture. Through this picture, you get a clear picture of the different cell organelles and the overview of the cell structure. So starting from nucleus, it is called as cell's control center. Okay, the nucleus contains, why it is called the cell's control center? Because it has DNA in it. It contains coded information that possess on every single inherited characteristics. It is the genetic material. Okay, it contains the information that is passed on every single inherited characteristics. Okay. Then there is endoplasmic reticulum. It is a smooth one. There is a smooth one and there is a rough one that store materials made by the cell. It is also responsible for the synthesis of protein and lipid. You know, the rough one is responsible for the synthesis of protein. It has ribosomes in it, and the smooth one is responsible for the synthesis of lipid, the fats, and it doesn't contain ribosomes in it. Now the lysosome is where digestion of cell nutrient takes place, and that is why it is called the suicidal bags of the cell. Why it is also called the suicidal bags of the cell? Because when the cell dies, so it digests all the remnants of the autolysis of the cell. So that is why it is called the suicidal bags of the cell. Now cytoplasm is a jelly-like fluid between cell membrane and the nucleus. So this is where all the organelles like organs are found, and all the chemical reactions that happen in a cell is in this cytoplasmic matrix. Next comes the cell membrane. Now the cell membrane is made up of double layer of fatty material, and it allows some materials to pass into and out of the cell because it has pores in it. Okay, it allows foods to pass into the cell and waste to pass out of the cell. Why? Because it is very porous, it is very thin, and it is composed of a fatty material. Okay, it is composed of a fatty material. One thing is not given in this diagram is the cell wall. Why it is not given? Because cell wall is not present in all the cell. It is present only in the plant cell. And cell wall is very important. Why? Because it gives the rigidity, and it provides a structure to the cell membrane. It surrounds the cell membrane, and it provides the shape and support that the cells need and protects them from mechanical shocks and injuries. And to be very clear, it is not present in animal cell. It is present only in plant cell. Now the mitochondrion. Mitochondrion is known as the powerhouse of the cell. Why it is known as the powerhouse of the cell? Because it produces energy in the form of ATP. The ATP is synthesized in this zigzag structure. This is called the inner membrane, and that is the outer membrane. Okay, the inner membrane is responsible for the synthesis of ATP, and that is why the mitochondrion is known as the powerhouse of the cell. Okay, you get the energy because of this little element called mitochondrion, okay, to use by breaking down substances during oxidative metabolism. Okay, it gets energy through oxidative respiration. Now this Golgi complex. Golgi complex is responsible for collecting, packaging and distributing molecules made in the cell. Whatever molecules are made in the cell, this Golgi complex collects, packages and distribute those molecules that are made in the cell. Now ribosome, these you see tiny molecules. These tiny molecules, these are protein producing factories. These ribosomes are responsible for protein synthesis. They are factories where protein are produced. The proteins produce chemical message that run a cell. Okay, the cell is run because of the proteins present in it. Now you see the red spherical structure present in the cell. These are called vacuoles. Okay, the vacuole are the storage house of the cell. It stores the fats, the water molecules and other waste substances in it. So that is why it is called a storehouse of the cell. You see this blue purplish spherical structure in the cell. This is peroxisome. Peroxisome is a vesicle that contains enzyme that carry out particular reactions such as detoxifying potentially harmful molecules. The last one in the picture is centriole. These tiny organs, these tiny little organs help the cell divide. When? At the time of reproduction. So centriole is the organ that help the cell divide. Okay, so this is the cell structure and different organelles of the cell and its functions also. Now let us quickly recap what all we have learned in this short lesson. So the first thing that we have learned is that cell is the basic and fundamental unit of life. Okay, it was first observed by Robert Hooke in 1665 in the thin slices of cork. Number 3, the cell theory was propounded by M.J. Sheldon and Theodore Schwann in 1838. Cell is a unit of protoplasm which includes cytoplasm and the nucleus. Now the fifth point is the cells, depending upon the number of cells, we have unicellular and multicellular organism. Then there are two types of cell, that is prokaryotes and eukaryotes. And the cell structure which we have discussed in the previous slide, that different organelles present in it in this picture. Okay, so this is all about the lesson cell structure and its functions. Until we meet again, keep learning, keep growing, stay safe. Thank you so much.